My superior loved tricking me into wearing tight-fitting pencil skirts to serve wine to sleazy clients while sticking close to them. Then, she would hint that I was single and a valid target while she excitedly waited for the clients to make a move on me. It was all in the name of checking the integrity of the clients and whether they were worthy business partners or not. The moment a client fell for it, she would rush over with righteous anger and throw wine in their faces. Then, she would lecture me with a voice heavy with anguish. Do you lack money so much that you'd throw your dignity away just for better results? She would trample all over my dignity to set up her image as a refined, noble woman. This time, she even prepared a gown with a super low neckline and pushed me to serve a client with a rich and powerful background. She threatened me by saying that if I did not go, she would deduct my bonus for 3 whole months of full attendance. But when I saw the familiar, cold man sitting in the seat of honor, it was my turn to laugh. If my brother saw me serving wine in this kind of dress, I did not doubt that by tomorrow, the company would be under my name. Joy Clark held up a skimpy gown with a deep V neckline in her hands and stared at me with disappointment as we stood in the washroom. Ninian, we need Mr. Xander to help us hit our KPI for the next year. Don't screw things up today. As she spoke, she yanked off my blazer and stuffed that crass gown into my arms. When it comes to business negotiations, you need to be softer. If you look so drab, the client won't be in the mood. We won't be able to negotiate anything that way. The gown was so thin that it looked like it was made of gauze. I could tell that it was not very proper. Joy had covered every part of her skin and made herself look like a professional while preparing to pose me as a bar girl. Miss Clark, the collar is too low and the hem is too short. I'll be flashing myself when I sit down, I said coolly. But Joy just snickered in disdain and urged. You don't have to be scared. I'm here, aren't I? We're testing our clients here. If Mr. Xander is a gentleman, he won't let his eyes wander, but if he's a pervert, I'll definitely step forward to protect you. She only ever stepped forward when the clients were about to touch my thigh. She also hinted to the clients every single time that I was a promiscuous woman and tempted them to make a move on me. I was not an idiot. I had already been taken advantage of twice. How could I not have learned my lesson by this time? But this time, the client was my own brother. Fine, I'll wear it. I took the gown and smiled, perhaps thinking that I had finally fallen for her lies. Joy nodded in satisfaction before pushing me into a stall. Through the door, I could hear her sending voice messages. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't worry, I'll have Ninian toast Mr. Xander later. No man can keep their hands to themselves. The moment he makes a move on Ninian, I'll have a reason to lower the price he offered and even set up the company's prestige. I sneered inwardly. I only moved out to gain experience because I did not want to depend on my family to survive. I wanted to try renting a place and living on my own. No one ever taught me how to deal with professional clients. In the past, I was worried that people might make things difficult for me, so I tolerated everything Joy threw at me, but today, I took out my phone and sent a text to the first contact on my phone. Henry, my dear brother, I'm going to show you something fun later. Make sure you're ready for it. ? That was Henry's reply. The negotiation was set in the most luxurious club in the downtown area. When I walked into the banquet hall, I saw a man with a cold demeanor sitting in the seat of honor. That was Henry Xander, my brother. He had left the family to build his own business. The moment we walked in, Joy pushed me over to Henry. Mr. Xander, this is Ninian. She's from my department. She's single and idolizes business legends like you. She'll be serving you tonight. Just tell her what you want. Joy put an extra emphasis on the words single and what you want. If Henry were another sleazy client, he might have gone with the flow and made a move on me. Go and serve Mr. Xander. Be smart. Why were you still standing there and daydreaming? She shoved a glass of red wine into my hands. I held the glass and walked to the seat of honor. My colleagues shot me strange looks. When I arrived in front of Henry, he looked up. The moment our gazes met, his eyes landed on my gown and its stupidly low V-line for a moment. Then he tightened his grip so hard on his wine glass that his veins bulged. I could almost hear him gnashing his teeth. Just when I was about to speak, Henry suddenly removed his blazer. Wear it, he growled with suppressed anger. But that move ended up as a signal for Joy. Mr. Xander, please keep your hands to yourself. She practically sprinted across the room like an Olympic athlete and said in righteous fury, We're here for negotiations, not for one of our employees to act as your bar girl. Ninian might be just a regular employee, but she has her own dignity. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you get to treat her like that. Joy turned around to start lecturing me. Ninian, I already told you plenty of times before to stay away from the clients. Stop wearing such outfits and throwing yourselves at them just for the sake of your KPI. Do you really lack money that much? How could you throw your shame away just to get a contract? You're making yourself appear cheap. She was the one who hinted that I was single, and the client could make a move on me. Somehow, I always ended up the cheap one in this scenario. When I saw how she was acting, I laughed. Miss Clark, You're the one who asked me to get closer, and even hinted at Mr. Xander. Quiet. Joy did not even give me a chance to speak. Based on her plan, she was going to kick up a huge fuss with the perverted actions between Henry and me. That way, she could reduce the price of the contract and uphold her righteous image, which helped her look great in front of Mr. Wilson. Unfortunately for her, she had chosen the wrong audience this time. Henry scoffed in anger and shot to his feet. That's enough. Covering someone up is making a move on them to you? The faint, wooden scent from the blazer enveloped me. Do you take me for a fool? If we're going to negotiate a business deal, then we should just stick to it. Why were you hinting at me to hook up with her? I came here to inspect this project, not to choose a lover. As for you, you're the one who forced your employee to wear this gown and serve me wine. Now you're turning the tables on her and accusing her of being cheap. He sneered. It seems like there's a huge problem with your management. I'm sorry to say, but I don't think I want to work with someone like this. I'm canceling the partnership for next year. I knew that Henry was furious. He was angry at people mistreating me, his own sister. He was livid at the fact that I was still working there, even though the company was so full of corruption. But I still had to pay my rent, and I was in my 20s. I did not want to keep asking my family for money. Mr. Xander, this is a misunderstanding. Mr. Wilson panicked and stood up as well. After all, if they lost the major deal with Henry, it would be a huge loss to the company. They had only wanted to gain the upper hand in this negotiation. They absolutely could not lose their deal with him. Mr. Wilson immediately turned on Joy and shouted at her. Joy, Mr. Xander has always been a man of integrity. He only removed his blazer to cover Ninian up. How could you accuse him of making a move on her? Apologize to Mr. Xander now. Joy trembled before casting a glance at me while I sat in a corner. She gritted her teeth. Then with teary eyes she said pitifully, I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Xander. I acted too rashly. I was just too worked up. Ninian has always loved tempting our clients to make a move on her. And she's always thinking about using her looks to climb the social ladder. I was only worried about you, Mr. Xander. This is exactly why I told her to dress up properly today, but she always goes on to wear such skimpy gowns. She even said you'd pay her more attention this way. I was just worried about things going wrong. That's why As I listened to her twisting the truth, I sneered. Miss Clark, let's be honest here. You're the one who gave me the gown, and you're the one who made me serve Mr. Xander. You said that if I refused, you'd deduct my bonus for full attendance. Now you're lying and saying that I picked the gown myself. Ninian, don't you have a conscience? Joy glared at me in indignation. Everyone in the department knows you love flirting with the clients. Yet you're trying to shift the blame and turn on me. Mr. Wilson, we need to make this clear with Mr. Xander today. She turned the attention back to Mr. Wilson. The other employees started whispering among themselves. Mr. Wilson was terrified of making Henry angry and causing a major loss to the company, so he just wanted to salvage the situation. He pinched the bridge of his nose and said, Enough, Ninian. Regardless of whether this is a misunderstanding or not, Mr. Xander's still angry because of you. That's an undeniable fact. You'll be handing the project with Grand World to Joy today. Then report to HR. You'll get your salary deducted, and you'll start over from the bottom again. When she saw that she had removed herself entirely from the situation, Joy sighed in relief before whispering into my ear. See that? I'm a senior employee in the company, and I can turn you into the scapegoat whenever I want. Don't even think about getting someone to speak up for you. It's your fault for being so unlucky. You just had to mess with Mr. Xander. Despite her provocation, I did not panic. Instead, I laughed. The company had been following up on a project with Grand World for half a year, but I got that project with the help of my best friend. It was because I kept whining to her about how the commission from my company was too low, and I sweet-talked her into it. That was why she had given me the project while rolling her eyes at me. How dare Mr. Wilson get someone else to take over? I just hoped that the company would not suffer another major loss so soon. Mr. Xander, are you pleased with this outcome? Mr. Wilson rubbed his hands as he looked at Henry uneasily. Joy quickly picked up her glass of wine and put on a fawning smile. I overreacted just now and offended you, Mr. Xander, but I've always said whatever comes to the top of my head, and am overprotective of my subordinates. Let me toast to you. Then, graciously, she drank the wine while Mr. Wilson spoke up on her behalf. That's right. Mr. Xander, don't let this girl affect our friendship. I was getting fed up listening to this. In any case, they were going to keep smearing my reputation, so I decided to just sit down and start eating. Ninian. When Joy saw that I still had the gall to sit down and eat, she got worked up and shoved me. Don't you have any manners at all? Hurry and apologize to Mr. Xander. Then she smiled at Henry. Please don't mind her, Mr. Xander. Ninian came from the countryside and is ignorant about the world. I think she only did what she did because she wants a better life. After all, when a person is poor, they'd cross any moral line to get rich. Henry listened to Joy as she called me poor and questioned my morals. His hand froze on his teacup. You seem to understand your subordinate's family background really well, Miss Clark, Henry said slowly. His voice was devoid of emotion. Thinking that things could still change for the better, Joy nodded. Of course. When she just joined us, she said that she came from the mountains. Girls like that have it hard when they work in the city. They're easily tempted by all the glamour around them and want to take shortcuts. She's the only one who gets harassed during every social event, not the other employees. Why else would that be? There's always a reason behind why something happens, right? If she didn't dress so scantily, why would someone harass her? Mr. Xander, as her superior, I'm to blame for her questionable behavior and scheming nature. But I promise you that as long as you work with us, we'll be clear and transparent with you and won't make a mess of things. Questionable behavior and scheming nature? Ninian. Henry repeated the words, and his smile turned colder. That's right. Joy sighed and pretended to find the situation regrettable. Even though it's shameful for us to mention such scandalous behavior, I wouldn't dare hide it from you. Smack. Henry slammed his teacup heavily on the table before glaring at Joy, like she was already dead to him. You're spreading lies about my sister trying to climb the social ladder by seducing others, and you're doing it right in front of my face. Is this how your company works, Miss Clark? The silence in the VIP room was absolute. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating quiet that usually followed a bomb drop. For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Joy stood frozen, her hand still holding her wine glass halfway to her mouth. Her eyes darted from Henry's furious face to me, sitting comfortably in the corner with a piece of lobster halfway to my lips. Why your sister? Joy stammered, the color draining from her face so fast she looked like a ghost with poorly applied blush. She let out a weak, breathy laugh, clearly hoping it was a bizarre joke. Mr. Xander, please. That's a very funny joke, but Ninian comes from a small village in the mountains. Her last name isn't even Xander. It's my mother's maiden name, I chimed in brightly, putting down my fork and wiping my mouth with a linen napkin. I use it so I don't get special treatment from people who want to kiss my brother's feet. Turns out it worked a little too well. Mr. Wilson's knees literally gave out. He grabbed the edge of the mahogany table to keep himself from collapsing, his chest heaving as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Mr. Xander, Mr. Wilson gasped, his voice trembling violently. Is this true? Henry didn't even look at him. His icy glare was fixed entirely on Joy, who was now shaking so hard the wine in her glass was sloshing over the rim onto her pristine white blouse. I left my family to build my own empire because I wanted to prove myself, Henry said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly soft register. My sister had the exact same idea. She wanted to learn the ropes of the corporate world without the safety net of our family's wealth. She wanted to earn her place. Henry took a step toward Joy, towering over her. And instead of teaching her business, you dressed her up like a piece of meat, threw her at clients, and used her to play your twisted little morality games to feed your own ego. And when I, her own flesh and blood, gave her my jacket so she wouldn't freeze in that cheap rag you forced her to wear, you accused her of being a whore. No, Mr. Xander, you misunderstood. Joy shrieked, panic finally breaking through her delusion. She slammed her glass down and rushed forward, her hands raised in a desperate plea. I didn't know. I swear, if I had known she was a Xander, I would never have. You would never have what? I interrupted, standing up. I pulled Henry's oversized, expensive blazer tighter around my shoulders. It smelled like cedar and safety. You wouldn't have treated me like that? But you'd still do it to the other girls, wouldn't you, Joy? You'd still threaten their bonuses. You'd still hint to sleazy old men that they were single and willing, just so you could swoop in, act like the hero, and squeeze a better margin out of the contract. I walked slowly toward her. The timid, naive persona I had maintained for 6 months vanished, replaced by the posture of the heiress I actually was. You didn't manage me, Joy. You bullied me, I said coldly. You told Mr. Wilson to deduct my salary. You took my Grand World project. Mr. Wilson snapped his head up. Survival instinct finally kicked in. No. Ninian, Miss Xander, absolutely not. Your salary is tripled. The Grand World project is yours. Joy is fired. Fired immediately. Joy spun around, her eyes wide with betrayal. Mr. Wilson, you can't do that. I brought in 30% of the department's revenue this year. You brought in lawsuits waiting to happen. Wilson roared, spittle flying from his lips. He turned back to Henry, practically bowing. Mr. Xander, please. This is the action of one rogue employee. Our company values integrity above all else. Save it. Henry cut him off, buttoning his cuffs with terrifying calm. Your management is a joke. You turn a blind eye to her methods because it brings you cheap margins. I wouldn't do business with you if you were the last firm on the eastern seaboard. Henry turned to me. Are you full? I am now, I smiled. Good. Let's go. Our parents are expecting us for dinner. Wait, please. Mr. Wilson scrambled around the table, actually trying to block the door. Mr. Xander, the Xander Corporation accounts for 40% of our annual projections. If you pull out, the board will have my head. We'll go bankrupt. Henry looked at the older man with utter disgust. Then you better start updating your resume, Wilson. I paused at the door, glancing back at Joy. She was slumped against the table, her perfectly styled hair now a messy bird's nest around her face. Oh, by the way, Joy, I said lightly, about that Grand World project you stole from me? You might want to actually read the contract thoroughly before you try to close it tomorrow. Just a friendly tip. With that, my brother and I walked out of the club, leaving a room completely devoid of air. The next morning, I didn't wake up to an alarm. I woke up in my king-sized bed in the Xander family estate, wrapped in silk sheets. My phone was blowing up. There were 42 missed calls from Mr. Wilson, 17 from HR begging me to ignore the administrative error of my termination, and ironically, 5 frantic texts from Joy. I ignored all of them and dialed the only person who mattered today. Tell me you didn't sleep through the drama. Chloe's voice chirped through the speaker before it even rang twice. Chloe was my best friend from college. She was also the vice president of acquisitions at Grand World, a titan in the commercial real estate sector. I slept wonderfully, actually. I laughed, walking over to my floor-to-ceiling windows to look out at the estate gardens. Are you ready for your meeting with Joy Clark? Ready? Ninian, I am practically vibrating, Chloe said darkly. When you told me she forced you into a cocktail dress to serve your own brother, I nearly drove over to her apartment last night. Does she honestly think she can waltz into my office today and take credit for the deal we spent 3 months putting together for you? She thinks she's a corporate shark, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. Make sure you bite back. Oh, there won't be anything left of her but a polyester pantsuit. I'll call you when it's done. Meanwhile, across town, Joy was walking into the Grand World headquarters. According to the texts I received later from my former colleagues, she had shown up to the office at 7 a.m., looking like a wreck but clinging to the Grand World folder like a life preserver. Her logic was desperate but predictable. If she could close the Grand World deal today, it would offset the catastrophic loss of the Xander account. Mr. Wilson couldn't fire her if she handed him a multi-million-dollar contract on a silver platter. At 10 a.m., Joy was escorted into the executive boardroom of Grand World. Chloe sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 terrifyingly serious corporate lawyers. Miss Clark, Chloe said coldly, not standing up or offering her hand. Have a seat. Joy plastered on her fake, fawning smile. Miss Sterling, it is such a pleasure. I know you were primarily dealing with my subordinate, Ninian, but unfortunately, we had to let her go due to some severe professional misconduct. I'm stepping in to finalize the partnership. Chloe leaned forward, resting her chin on her steepled fingers. Professional misconduct? You mean refusing to act as a high-end escort for your clients? Joy's smile froze. The blood drained from her face for the second time in 24 hours. Excuse me? I know exactly why Ninian left your company, Miss Clark, Chloe said, her voice dripping with venom. I also know that the only reason Grand World even entertained a contract with a second-rate, morally bankrupt firm like yours was because Ninian asked me to as a personal favor. Joy's eyes widened. Personal favor. Ninian and I were roommates at Stanford, Chloe said, casually dropping the nuke. We're best friends. The terms in that folder you're holding were drafted specifically to help Ninian get her footing in the industry. But since she's no longer with you. Chloe gestured to one of the lawyers, who slid a single piece of paper across the table to Joy. This is a formal withdrawal of all offers, Chloe stated. Grand World is permanently terminating all negotiations with your firm. Furthermore, our legal department is filing a formal complaint against your company for predatory practices. We don't do business with pimps, Miss Clark. Pimps? Joy gasped, standing up so fast her chair tipped over. Miss Sterling, you can't do this. The contract is already verbally agreed upon. Read the fine print on the preliminary draft, Joy, Chloe smiled viciously. Clause 4b. The execution of this contract is contingent on Ninian acting as the primary project lead. Without her, the contract is null and void. Joy stared at the document, the words blurring together. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had stolen a project that was literally designed to be worthless without the person she had just bullied out of the company. Security will show you out, Chloe said, returning her attention to her laptop. Have a terrible day. By 2 p.m. that afternoon, Wilson's company was in freefall. News travels fast in the corporate world. When a giant like the Xander Corporation publicly blacklists a mid-sized firm, the sharks smell blood. When Grand World follows suit hours later, the firm is basically dead in the water. Other clients began pulling their accounts, citing internal management instability. Mr. Wilson had officially fired Joy, screaming at her in the middle of the bullpen before having security throw her belongings into the street. But it was too little too late. His stock was crashing, his board of directors was demanding his resignation, and bankruptcy was looming on the horizon. Meanwhile, I was sitting in Henry's palatial office, sipping a very expensive espresso. Wilson's stock is down 40% since the market opened, Henry remarked, looking at the monitors on his desk. He glanced up at me. I could buy his whole operation for the price of a decent yacht. Don't, I said, setting my cup down. Henry raised an eyebrow. Going soft, Neen? After what they put you through? No, I smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile that I had inherited directly from our father. I want to buy it. Henry paused, then leaned back in his leather chair, a look of profound pride washing over his face. You want to acquire them? I spent 6 months there, I explained, walking over to the window. Their foundational business model isn't bad. The mid-level employees are actually very talented. The rot is entirely at the top. Wilson's cowardice and Joy's toxic management. If we gut the C-suite, replace the management with people who actually value merit over manipulation, it could be highly profitable. I turned to look at my brother. I wanted to learn the business. What better way to prove I've learned it than by executing a hostile takeover of the company that tried to ruin me, and turning it into a gold mine? Henry pressed the intercom button on his desk. Sarah, get the mergers and acquisitions team in here immediately. My sister is going shopping. A week later, the city's annual Corporate Excellence Gala was held at the Ritz-Carlton. It was the premier networking event of the year, a place where multi-million-dollar deals were made over champagne and caviar. I arrived in a stunning, midnight blue Oscar de la Renta gown. It didn't have a plunging neckline, and it certainly wasn't cheap. It fit perfectly, radiating elegance and power. Henry walked beside me in a tailored tuxedo, the two of us parting the crowd like royalty. Every head turned. Whispers rippled through the ballroom. I was no longer the mousy girl hiding behind ugly glasses and oversized blazers. I was Ninian Xander, the newly revealed heiress to one of the country's most powerful families. Across the room, standing near the bathrooms and looking entirely out of place, were Joy and Mr. Wilson. I had to hand it to them. Their desperation was impressive. Wilson's company was hours away from filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He must have used his last shred of credit to buy tickets to this gala, hoping for a miracle investor. Joy was with him, though it was clear they hated each other. She had likely attached herself to him like a parasite, hoping to network her way into a new job before her reputation completely sunk her. When Joy saw me, she froze. Her eyes raked over my diamonds, my custom gown, and the way the city's billionaires were stepping aside to let me pass. The cognitive dissonance was too much for her to bear. Her brain simply rejected the reality in front of her. Fueled by a week of bitterness, cheap wine, and complete delusion, Joy actually marched across the ballroom floor toward me. Ninian, she hissed, stepping into my path. The conversations around us immediately died down. Several CEOs, including my friend Chloe who was chatting with the mayor, turned to watch. What are you doing here? Joy demanded, her voice shrill. She looked me up and down with sneering jealousy. Did you rent that dress? Are you still trying to hook a rich man by pretending you belong here? You ruined my life. You cost me my job, and now you have the nerve to sneak into an event like this. Henry stepped forward, his eyes flashing with lethal intent, but I put a hand on his chest, stopping him. Joy, I said, my voice calm, projecting clearly across the suddenly quiet room. I didn't sneak in. I was invited. Bullshit. Joy spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. Mr. Wilson was frantically trying to grab her arm to pull her back, his face pale with terror as he realized who was watching. You're a fraud. You're just a cheap little gold digger from the mountains who lied her way into Mr. Xander's bed. Gasps echoed through the room. Before I could even respond, an older, distinguished man with silver hair and an aura of absolute authority stepped out of the crowd. It was Arthur Xander. My father. Is there a problem here? My father asked, his voice booming like thunder. Joy wheeled around, seeing the patriarch of the Xander family. She immediately tried to play the victim. Mr. Xander. Sir, I apologize for the scene. I was just trying to have security remove this woman. She's an imposter. She used to work for me. She's a tramp who seduces men for money, and she's been telling people she's related to your family. My father looked at Joy as if she were a cockroach that had learned to speak. He then looked at me, his stern face softening into a warm, fatherly smile. You look beautiful tonight, sweetheart. Thanks, Dad, I smiled. The word dropped into the silence like an anvil. Dad. Joy's jaw literally slacked. Her eyes darted from my father to Henry to me. Her arm fell limply to her side. Dad, she whispered, her voice cracking. Ninian is my youngest daughter, my father said to Joy, his tone turning to ice. And if I ever hear you speak her name again, I will personally ensure that not only will you never work in this city again, but you won't even be able to rent an apartment in it. Do you understand me? Joy stumbled backward, trembling so violently she could barely stand. She looked around the room, realizing that every major player in the industry had just witnessed her digging her own grave. Mr. Wilson finally grabbed her, his face slick with sweat. I am so sorry, Mr. Xander. She is unwell. We are leaving immediately. Stay, Wilson, I commanded. My voice wasn't loud, but it possessed an authority that made the older man freeze in his tracks. I walked toward him, the crowd parting to give me space. I heard your board is filing for bankruptcy tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I said calmly. Wilson swallowed hard, nodding in humiliation. Yes. We lost too many accounts. I have a counteroffer, I said. I gestured to Chloe, who walked forward, handing me a sleek black folder. I held it out to Wilson. This is a buyout agreement. Xander Acquisitions is purchasing your firm. We are buying out your shares for exactly 10 cents on the dollar. You will step down as CEO immediately, forfeit your severance package, and hand over complete operational control to me. Wilson stared at the folder in horror. 10 cents on the dollar was an insult. It was pocket change. It would wipe out his life's work. 10 cents, he choked out. Ninian. Miss Xander, please. That's a robbery. The company assets alone are depreciating by the hour. I cut him off smoothly. You can take this deal, pay off your immediate debts, and retire quietly to a very modest house in the suburbs. Or, you can file for bankruptcy tomorrow. The creditors will seize everything you own, and you will end up in prison for the gross negligence and mismanagement that my auditors found hidden in your accounting books over the last 5 years. I took a step closer, my eyes locking onto his. I am holding the lifeline, Mr. Wilson. Take it or drown. Wilson looked at the faces surrounding him. He saw no pity. He reached out with a trembling hand, took the pen from Chloe, and signed the document on a nearby cocktail table. Done, he whispered brokenly. Excellent, I said, taking the folder back. I turned my attention to Joy, who was watching her former boss surrender with hollow, dead eyes. As for you, Joy, I said, my voice dropping the corporate formality, replacing it with pure vindication. You spent months trying to teach me how to survive in this business. You told me I had to throw away my dignity to get results. You told me I had to let people trample over me. I smiled, looking down at her. Let me teach you your first real business lesson. Never insult the person pouring your drinks. You never know who owns the building. I snapped my fingers. Security. Escort these two out. They're trespassing. The transition was brutal and efficient. The morning after the gala, I walked into my former office building. I wasn't wearing a cheap blazer or a skimpy cocktail dress. I wore a tailored, charcoal gray pantsuit, and I was flanked by my brother's top lawyers and HR executives. The bullpen fell dead silent as I walked past the desk I used to sit at. My former colleagues stared in shock as I bypassed the cubicles and walked straight into the corner office that used to belong to Mr. Wilson. By noon, the company was restructured. I fired the entire executive board that had enabled Wilson's corrupt practices. I promoted the hardworking, underpaid mid-level employees who actually did the heavy lifting. I instituted strict, ironclad HR policies protecting employees from client harassment, making it a fireable offense for any manager to put their team in compromised positions. As for Joy, my father's warning at the gala proved to be prophetic. Blacklisted by the Xanders and Grand World, word of her toxic behavior spread like wildfire. No reputable firm would touch her. I heard through the grapevine a few months later that she was working as a junior sales rep for a shady, strip mall cosmetics company, cold calling people who hung up on her. She had been stripped of her power, her prestige, and her victims. One evening, about 6 months after the acquisition, I was standing in my office, looking out over the city skyline. The company's profits had tripled since I took over. The culture was thriving. The door opened, and Henry walked in, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of vintage champagne. Celebrating a successful Q3? He asked, pouring the drinks and handing me one. Just reflecting, I said, taking the glass. I looked at my reflection in the window, thinking back to the girl who had been forced into a washroom stall, holding a trashy gown, wondering how she was going to survive. You did good, Neen, Henry said softly, clinking his glass against mine. You didn't just learn the industry. You conquered it. I took a sip of the champagne, the taste crisp and victorious. Joy was right about one thing, I said, a smirk playing on my lips. Oh, Henry raised an eyebrow. What's that? She said I was going to end up running things. I turned away from the window, walking over to my mahogany desk and sitting down in the CEO's chair. She just didn't realize I'd be running her out of town to do it.